Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of the Red Sofa Conversations. So why am I doing this series? Well, the reason is because I believe that conversation is the gateway to connection. I think that it's really important to use our voice to talk about subjects that actually affect all of us, whatever our race, our background, our age, our sex, our gender, whatever. And today's conversation is going to be about mental health. So with me on the red sofa today is my friend Tim, who I've known for 30 years, right?
Just about.
From school. And I'm really excited to have Tim as my guest on the red sofa because actually, even though we went to school together, we lost touch for a while. I think we lost touch for just over 20 years. And we got back in touch about 4 years ago. And when we first met, we were, doing the usual, what have you been up to? And Tim was really honest. And he opened up and he told me about, periods in his life that he'd struggled. And his vulnerability and him opening up to me this way, it was a catalyst because it made me be just as honest back. And I think that is why we have become such good friends again. I mean, much better than we were in school and much closer because we're able to actually talk and share all of ourselves and not just the fun, pretty Instagram, Facebook parts. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so we decided to do mental health because we both believe that mental health is equally as important as physical health. And this is a subject that we're both very passionate about. And we want to be part of a larger conversation to be able to create a sea change where everybody actually accepts that as a given. Would you agree?
Totally. I mean, it's a big problem, mental health, in the UK. So.
And the world, I think.
And in the world, not just UK. We're not alone. But 1 in 4 people at any one time in the UK suffers from mental health issues. And 1 in 5 have suicidal thoughts or suicidal tendencies. So it is a very, very, very big problem. Yeah.
I remember the first time that I saw the 1 in 4 stat, and I remember being so shocked by it because that means, I kept looking around and seeing groups of people and thinking 1 in 4, 1 in 4. I mean, actually, I think it's probably higher than 1 in 4, to be honest, because I think that there's a tendency, when we talk about mental health, for, I think, some people to sort of see it as an us and them, like, oh, I'm fine, I don't have those struggles. But I think when we're talking about mental health, we're talking about a spectrum.
Yeah.
And I think that, it's really important to understand that when you're having a bad week or, a bad day or a bad week or a bad month, it's on that spectrum of whether you're having, a bad year, etc. And I think that one thing that's really important, and it's something that I have learned, because this is a journey for me too, is to not identify solely with how I'm feeling at any particular time. Mm-hmm. And what that means is that the difference between defining yourself as I am an anxious person to I suffer from anxiety from time to time. And recognizing that it's not part of your identity, it doesn't define you, it is one small part that makes up who you are. And I think if we can start to see it as that and normalize it, I think that helps us be kinder in terms of then looking at it as we would any other health condition and think, oh, okay, what can I do to help myself? Whereas if we do it from a place of shame or guilt or feeling like we're the only ones that are going through this, it makes it even harder when we need our own strength the most.
Yeah, so I think that's right. I think it's very easy to label yourself as having mental illness and allowing that then to become what you are.
Yeah.
And some people, I think, also have a fear of that. So you're kind of, oh, I can't be ill. I can't be mentally ill because whether it's cultural or personal beliefs or
what people will think,
or what do people think, because I think there's an association where people may be suffering from a mental health illness, whether it's depression, anxiety, whatever, and the idea of perhaps suffering from that, they think that makes them insane. Like there's an insanity label.
Yeah.
Or weak.
I mean, let's look at weak.
Yeah.
And I remember actually that I saw something on Facebook where it said, and I don't have the quote with me, but it said something to the effect of, somebody who is suffering from anxiety, it is not that they're weak, it's that they have been strong for so long, and that's what it is. And I remember thinking, oh my God, it's starting to reframe in a different way and start to understand and feel self-compassion.
But actually, if you think about it, a lot of the people that you might know personally or professionally, that whether it's even celebrities as well that have come out recently, a lot of them are seen as very strong people, and people are often very outgoing, and people are very surprised that it's those kind of people that seem to be suffering from this. But actually, I think they're probably just the same as everybody else. It's just that they are able to express it better. However, there is a thing where I think where strong people do end up taking more on, and therefore because they're constantly strong, they feel they have to be constantly strong, and they put themselves under more pressure, and that can also be a contribution to the issues.
I think
but it doesn't necessarily mean you will be a strong person and not suffer from it.
And that's why I think it's important to sort of make the point that we all actually have struggles or have challenges in varying degrees with mental health. I don't think it's something that happens if you're, just having a high-powered job, or you're just, or you're a celebrity or whatever.
Absolutely.
All of us, and because life has its ups and downs, and there are going to be periods that, that we go through in life that mean that we are under more strain than others. Grief can also bring on that. I certainly, my mental health definitely, was more fragile when I was in hugely active grief, because it was such a shock. And so I think that, and this is the ironic thing, it's like at times when we are struggling, and I have had, anxious periods in my life, and it's kind of interesting because the first time it happened, I was totally unprepared, and I didn't know, I wasn't sleeping, and I had, sort of like a upset stomach, and then, I would have sort of palpitations, or not palpitations, but I would find that I couldn't get breath, and I didn't know what was happening. And then the next time where I had it was 7 years later, and it manifested totally differently. And so it's like almost like you think that you've figured it out, and you've figured out exactly the tools that are going to help you and what works for you, and then you're blindsided again. And so I think that shows that, it's an evolution and it's a journey, and I think that everybody's journey is different in figuring out what's going to work.
Yeah, I think that's the whole point, is that you don't. I think, like you say, there's a journey, and sometimes it does blindside you. Sometimes you do not see it coming. But also you've got to understand, I think there is a difference between, say, feeling down about something, and actually suffering from depression. They're like two different things.
They
are. But sometimes you mightn't be in the middle of it and not even know that you're suffering from it.
Absolutely.
And you just think something's wrong,
and
like you say.
And you don't know what it is.
And you don't know what it is. You can't get out of bed.
And you don't have language for it.
That's right. And so I think there could be much more done with the way things are at the moment, is that perhaps, that we can express things better.
But I think that's why having conversations like this, and Prince William, Prince Harry, and when Princess Catherine did that video for Heads Together, and they launched Heads Together, I thought that was a huge thing.
Yeah.
It was a huge spotlight on an important issue, and the fact that they chose to make that, the really important issue for them, and they explained why, because it underpins our mental health along with our physical health, underpins our ability to function in life. And by prioritizing it in the same way, what they did is that they made me kind of feel like, oh my gosh, yes, this is so important. And I think they inspired a hell of a lot of people. And when we have conversations like this and we normalize it, it means that when you don't know quite what's wrong and you hear somebody talking and you sort of recognize, oh, well, I'm having problems sleeping and I'm feeling like this or I'm feeling like that. And then it opens the doorway, I think, to be able to then look to get help. And now with the internet, there are so many resources available. Because certainly when I was having periods where, I was having periods where I was experiencing a lot of anxiety, I didn't turn to the internet at all. I wasn't even as aware of, I wasn't on Facebook for a start. I didn't use the internet as a tool to learn the way that I do now. And I just wasn't as aware of like all the different resources. And I think that now, even on Instagram, I kind of followed Heads Together, and then all these other mental health charities came up, like Mind and just loads of them. And when you have access and when you see quotes and when you have celebrities talking and people that you, from the outside, you perceive as being perfect and having perfect lives, and you see them being honest and opening up about who they are and what their struggles are, it makes all of us then be like, okay, if they're being brave and they're doing it, I can do it too. And that's, I think, what creates.
Well, I think you touched on something. Sorry, I've got a dead leg. Okay. I think one of the things that you touched on is actually the language and understanding that by people speaking about it more, then a language can start being created, and then people can start understanding how they're feeling, what they can relate to. That's sorry, I'm trying to think how to say this. They can relate somebody else's experience to their own. And I think that is really key. So I think it's very important that people do start talking about it, because as you've already said, these aren't exact words, but it's quite isolating.
Yes.
You do feel on your own. Now, we've just said already right at the beginning that it's 1 in 4 people.
Yeah.
So you're not on your own. There are another 25% of people in this country are feeling something along the lines of what you might be feeling.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of people. So firstly, there's that sense of isolation. So people talking about it is great. And this is why I agreed to talk today, is because I think the more people talk about it, the more we can create a language, the more we can understand what's going on.
And we feel like we're part of the human race who we all have to be aware and look after ourselves. And then we have the tools to do it. Glenn Close, she's another person. She created, I think, Bring Change to Mind, because her sister has a mental health illness. I can't remember what it is. And she started being an advocate and talking. And I think that's why these are so important. And before we sort of move on to, what that looks like for us when we notice that we are struggling at different periods, you made a really good point, which where you said that there's a difference. We use the word, "Oh, I'm depressed," very cavalierly. I'm not saying that's wrong, but there is a difference between the cavalier use of, "Oh, I'm depressed," to "I have depression." And when Robin Williams died, there were a lot of excellent articles written at the time. There were a couple from The Guardian that I remember sharing on Facebook because it had the best analogy. So it said something like, comparing having a bad day to depression is like comparing a paper cut to having your arm amputated. And the visual for that was so powerful for me, and it kind of really nailed it, because I think that when we underestimate what people can go through, we sort of we can, probably not even intentionally, but we can be a bit cavalier. Oh, just cheer up. Oh, it's not so bad. You know what? Like when you're in that place and when you're feeling like everything's out of control and you don't feel like you, because that's the worst thing. You don't well, for me, when I have gone through challenging times, I don't feel like me. And that's the scariest thing for me, because I know what I normally feel like, and when I don't recognize myself, I then feel powerless to kind of get through.
Yeah, but it's kind of like, I think one of the problems is with like mental health illness is that that it's, you can't see it. So if if someone breaks a leg, you're like, or they're in a cast or whatever, you go,
must be so painful.
And you can physically see it. But I'll give you an example. So migraines.
Yeah.
If you've had a migraine, that's an awful experience. But if you've never had one, you think it's just a headache. Get some aspirin and off you go. See you later, go and do your work. And it doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't.
And mental health is, again, it's invisible a lot of the time. Of course, there are people that are severely mentally ill, and that's not necessarily invisible when you see them in the street or whatever.
Yeah.
But a lot of people go through this sort of silent pain and silent suffering. And so I think that's really why, unless people have gone through it themselves, then they can't fully relate to it. And so the example you gave with Robin Williams is great, because it gives some sort of indication. It allows people to sort of relate on something by translating the mental into a physical. Mm. So I think that's it. That's a good example.
I mean, actually, at the time, I'm not actually sure whether Robin Williams' death was caused by suicide, because at the time that's what it was. But I'm sure that I read somewhere after that his partner said that he was suffering from another health condition.
But regardless, it's well documented and well known that he has suffered from depression for a very, very long time.
And they say, haven't you seen this again? The stickers on Facebook where they talk about with him, his picture is shown, but they said, it's the people that are the cheeriest, and they make and they bring so much joy to other people, and they try and make everything lighter for other people, that actually can be the people that are struggling the most. And when you think about that, well, that's a really strong person that's able to, when they're struggling, be able to do that for others. And so nothing about mental health is weak. When you are going through any kind of battle in life, and I think that when you have mental health challenges, it feels like a battle, but anytime you're going through that, the fact that you're going through that is proof that you're strong. And I want to just say one thing about suicide, and then we can move on. But I think that with mental health, with suicide, with a lot of things that people might not understand, the one thing that I think we all need to start showing each other more, and we can always do better even if we already are this, is empathy. Because sometimes when I've read things that in newspapers, in articles, on in social media, it's quite unkind when sometimes they talk about death by suicide, and I hear the word selfish used, and it pains me greatly, because actually when you are in a low state, you kind of the thoughts that I've had are, I'm not a good friend, I'm not a good this, it would just be better if, I wasn't around. And I've never come to the point of really contemplating suicide, but I've come to the point where I felt low, and I felt sad, and I felt like I was a burden. And I think that is what a lot of people that actually end up dying by suicide is, they feel that the lives of their loved ones would be better if they weren't around. And we know that that's not true, but that's how you feel. So I think having empathy for somebody who has struggled and inadvertently, or consciously or unconsciously ended up dying by suicide, I think we need to have empathy for that. And so
well, again, it comes from a lack of understanding, and I think, you know, if you may or may not be suffering from mental health issues yourself, and you're thinking along these lines, and you haven't sought help, that's the time, if you haven't already done it, to go and get help. Yeah, that's the trigger. I'm lucky. I have had mental health issues which we may or may not touch on, but the day I sought help was the one day I thought I don't know what tomorrow is all about.
Yeah.
I woke up and I thought, I don't care if the sun rises tomorrow, and that was the day that I was like, okay, I need to do something about this. So, my advice to anybody, if you are listening and you're not sure and you're feeling like that, is now is the time to get help.
And reach out. You know, there's in the UK, there's the Samaritans. There are lots of different organisations, but also by talking about this and by talking about and you know, Tim and I want to also, you know, share what we've experienced, and if any of these things are something that, you know, you see other people in your life experiencing, or they're talking about but they're not putting all the jigsaw pieces together, you know, then, you know, reach out to them. Like, don't wait, because, you know, it's so important to feel supported. So for me, I know that I'm having a particularly low period when I can't even go to the supermarket, and I get a lot. I'm a bit strange. I actually get a lot of joy. I get a lot of joy going to the supermarket. It's a little adventure. I like going up and down the aisles. I like choosing things with the latest sell-by dates. This is why I don't do internet shopping. And I know that when I sort of have real resistance to even going to the supermarket, which is something that I like to do, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not feeling great. And, you know, I might not wash my hair for a while. And it's those kinds of things that sort of alert me to the fact that, okay, I'm not feeling great. Now, at the same time, I'm still able to be a really good friend. When someone calls me and they have a problem, my default is to naturally be able to support them. With other people, they'll have different issues. So Tim, how do you know when you're kind of going through a period where you're not feeling great?
I was just, before I go into that, I was just going to say it's really important to understand it does affect people differently.
Yes.
It just does. So whilst you might be able to communicate with friends and be supportive for them, whilst going through your own difficulties, I'm aware of people that can't even get out of bed. They can't, and they can barely even. I mean, you said not about not washing your hair, but they can't even wash themselves. There's that. It's that debilitating for them. Question: how do I know when I'm in that? I tend to know because I start dropping the things that are good for me.
Yeah.
So I'll, I do
like eating well.
Eating well. Exercising, so I do Tai Chi, that's out the window. My meditation all stops. All the things that should help me go through the process, I just don't feel like doing. I start dropping, and then I start eating crap, and then
it becomes a vicious cycle.
So I'm kind of stuck in this thing until work doesn't interest me, people don't interest me, and then suddenly I'm like, and I don't always notice it. I've started to notice it a bit more, but sometimes it catches me out still.
I know.
And I'll be halfway in it. I'm lucky when it comes to that side of things. I can manage it. Like, I'm aware of it. I've lived with it long enough that I now know when it's happening most of the time.
Yeah.
And so I don't tend to go too far with it because I have something click and sort of do a bit of a comeback. But it can, it's a bit insidious, really. It just literally, it could be a sunny day, everything's great, and then suddenly you're realising your thought processes aren't matching what is going on around you.
Mm-hmm.
So So yeah, I mean, I think for me the hardest thing that I had to deal with was about 4 years ago. I started suffering anxiety. I'm over it now, so there is hope. But it became debilitating. So I started to do all the things. In fact, I thought it was depression. So to begin with, I thought it was a form of depression, and I believe medically it is. But I started.
They're very linked, anxiety.
Yeah, and
depression.
I realised I was exhibiting behaviours that reminded me of my depression, but I wasn't feeling depressed. In fact, I was feeling, if anything, the opposite. I was feeling more manic.
Yeah.
And I was much more energised, and I was much more. But my behaviours were like when I've had depression. So I could recognise that I was dropping things, but I was just like constantly. And then I started to get anxiety attacks.
Like panic attacks?
Like panic attacks. I was standing in front of a group of people, so I was demonstrating some moves for Tai Chi to a group of people, and literally, suddenly, I got this huge wave of like, what the? And I just wanted the ground to swallow me up. It was...
in an instant.
In an instant. I was like, what am I doing here? My heart was beating, my leg was wobbling, and I just thought I was going to fall over. I started feeling dizzy. In fact, I had to go and get the teacher to replace me because of that. And it
must
kind
have
of
been so scary.
It was scary. Because I didn't know what it was.
That
was the first time that I remember. And then what happened from there, it seemed to start to escalate. So it started just walking down the street. The roads felt like, the pavement started to feel like they were rubber. So it felt like I was going to keel over. And then it started to hit me when I was on the tube. So then I started getting kind of like a fight or flight response. So people were too close and I wanted to punch them or run out screaming.
Yeah.
That's all there was no sort of...
So no rush hour travelling.
So rush hour, it got to the point where even if it wasn't in rush hour, I just had this immediate...
You felt it was closing
and I
in.
felt the ground was I was going to fall over, and this person was too close, and I need to get out of here. And it just became more and more, and I was doing all the things. I'd realised that my behaviours had been like depression, so I went into full management mode of that. Okay. So I exercised more, meditated more. I did everything that I was supposed to do, and it got worse. And so
you must have felt so like that next level of, well, I'm doing the things that worked before, I would, if that was me, I would feel angry. Like, I'm doing everything, and why is this not better already?
It was a point where it started to feel helpless. Yeah. Like I couldn't understand what was happening here. Yeah. And up until that point, and I think we've talked about this privately, but up until that point, I was always a believer that you could, because my experience had taught me that, is that you can always control certain things. So you can control it yourself. So somebody whose spiritual beliefs is about mind and body, I thought, if I can get a grip of that, if I can control that, and I can relax into that, I'll be able to get through this. It didn't work. Everything I knew didn't work. Right. So, up until that point, I was never an advocate of medication. I didn't think that I would ever need it. But I realised at this point that this was something else. This was something different. Yeah. This was chemical. It felt like something just wasn't working. It just was
different.
Yeah, well, it turned out it was chemical. But and so I went, and the best thing I ever did was go to the doctors and say, look, do it. And then they gave me some drugs, and they had to build it, and we tried it. And it worked, and eventually I got to a point where I was back again. Now, again, I was one of those people, I didn't want to get stuck on it. I didn't want to stay on this drug. what happened, there was a chemical imbalance that my body wasn't releasing enough serotonin, and so they had to give me something to release that back and teach the brain or body to start releasing it again. So that worked.
Was that is it an SSRI?
I think so, yeah, something like that.
Because anyway, that takes a few weeks to kick in.
It does, yeah, and actually you've got to try different levels.
Right.
But I had a friend of mine who was on the same drug, and for him it was almost like a badge of honour. For me, it was a band-aid. Like, I wanted to get back so that I could then start working on myself again to get out of it. And that's what I did, and it worked. It took a while to come off them, but it's patience. I would rather not have come off them too quickly and set myself back than to basically, sorry, I'm muttering a bit, but
it's okay.
What happened is I had a doctor who did take me off too quickly. He cut me off,
right.
And I reverted back within 3 days.
Yeah.
And so I then finally got a good doctor, and there's again advice in that is if you're not happy with your doctor, change them.
Yes.
Change them, because you might get someone better, and I did.
Yeah.
And this guy was absolutely great, and I will always be grateful for him. Mm-hmm. He said, no, we're not rushing it. I'm bringing you down slowly. We're going to monitor it. And he kept calling me back every month. Where are we at? No, we're hitting winter. We're not going to change your level of dosage till after the winter, till it starts getting more bright, because of obviously people can be affected by seasonal. Yeah. So he worked, and it took me about 2 years to come off those. I'm now off them, and if you put a microphone in my hand, you can't get it off me. Okay, I will stand up in front of crowds. I am presenting things to. I'm a judge on panels for the hospitality industry. We're doing, I've done some public speaking. I've taken much larger groups in Tai Chi now, and so if I look back,
a cycle,
yeah, but actually I'm better than I was.
Yeah.
In that respect, my confidence is much more. But yet 4 years ago, I couldn't even stand behind somebody to follow their movements because my anxiety was that much. I couldn't step on the tube without thinking I might want to punch somebody. Now, I mean, I don't like the tube now anyway, but I don't want to punch somebody. In fact, I'm even happy to give them my chair, right? It's just very different. So the point is, sometimes you just got to say enough is enough, and I've got to do something about that.
I'm going to try,
And I'm glad I did, because my experience now is much better than it was before. And I've had quite a journey since that time, personally. But I've got strength from the fact. And I feel proud of myself that I couldn't stand in front of one person 4 or 5 years ago. And now I can do it in front of 200 people.
On the red sofa.
And now I'm on the red sofa, so don't get much better than that. So I had an expression this morning.
Yeah.
Sorry, that I just wanted to say before I pass over, and that was, and it's a bit of a cliche, but when I heard it, I thought it so
Clichés
resonated.
Are there because they're true.
Yeah. It's darkest before dawn.
Yeah.
And it's so true. Like, that period was so dark for me, and I remember there's about 3 months of that time where I remember. There's 3 months of that time I don't really remember very well.
Yeah.
But I came through that. I worked on it. But I also thought to myself, when I was coming backwards off the drugs, now some people won't ever come off them, that if it doesn't work and I've got to stay on a certain level, but that makes me feel okay, then that is okay.
Yeah. Now, I just want to touch on you talked about a lot of things that we've sort of talked about privately. So one thing I think is that finding the right doctor, finding somebody that you trust and who hears you and who then understands this whole area is essential. And not every doctor is like that. I think that obviously, in the UK, there's so many, cuts in funding, on the NHS that, when you, if you do go to your GP, at times, the wait lists can be 9 months before you can go and actually, see somebody to have CBT or anything. And when you're struggling, that's a lifetime away. That's why, there are other resources, but we need to get better at that. Secondly, in terms of finding the right doctor, I think that when I have been struggling the most, I think that it's so easy to feel like nobody understands, because when you're not speaking to a doctor who does really understand, you feel even more isolated. But persevere, because if you talk to other friends who've seen different people, you will find the right person that's right for you. And when you find the person that hears everything you're going through and says to you, oh, I know exactly what this is, and this is it, and you're not broken, and this is a temporary period, and this is what we're going to do, you feel the relief that you feel from just hearing that somebody understands you is amazing.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of medication, I personally haven't taken any medication. I think that there are some doctors that might be quite trigger happy into just wanting to prescribe medication, and I don't think that that's necessarily the cure-all in every situation. Certainly I had people that wanted that, and I didn't feel that was something that I needed. And for me, I felt like I wanted to really get to the bottom as to what the issues were. But they're in another situation, I think we have to assess on a case-by-case basis for ourselves. And I think that in another situation, taking medication might be the thing that is needed to stabilize, to be able to get you to the point of being able to, tackle the next step. And so we're not advocating one over the other. I think like with everything, with mental health, it's individual. The other thing that you mentioned a bit before is, let's face it, there is a stigma about it, which is why we're doing this and we're talking about it. And the stigma has to do with the invisibility. You cannot see it on your face. So, and this is not just a stigma in society, even insurance companies. So I want to give you an example of something I found out a few months back. So when you have private medical insurance, depending on your level of cover, it can be uncapped. It's uncapped for any, surgeries, anything you might have. But, and I don't know whether this is all insurance companies, but it was certainly one that I found out. For any psychiatric treatment, it's capped at 25,000. And 25,000, just to put this in context, would be 1 month's stay in a facility like, for example, the Priory. 1 month stay, and that's it. It's 25,000. So if you think about it, you don't always get to the point where you're referred straight into the Priory, and after you complete a month, you're going to need ongoing support. So why is it? It sort of made me think, why are we in that state prioritizing physical health and getting back to full physical recovery over mental health? It doesn't seem fair to me. And I think these are the kinds of things that we need to change, because only when we see them as completely equal things will everybody feel like they can be fully supported and have access to the best care. All right, I'm coming off my soapbox now.
Yeah, it's coming off the red sofa. Okay, so, I think it's important. I want to talk about what an example of one of the doctors.
Okay.
The guy that took me off my medication like that. The alarm bell should have been ringing at the time. So I went to see him, and he wasn't particularly interested. I said, I want to start coming off. I want to start weaning myself off these. Mm-hmm. He said, okay, well, we'll just take you straight off. Now, of course, you look at a doctor and you think, oh, yeah, they know what they're doing. But what I should have done is, I'm going to see your shot face in a second. We said, okay, fine, da-da-da-da. Then as I was leaving, I was out in the corridor, and then he called my name and said, I've got one more question. Do you have any suicidal thoughts?
He called that out?
Wow. As I was in the corridor, after we'd finished, after he'd signed off saying, I don't need any more.
that's a very extreme thing, but like even that's, I mean,
it's appalling.
No,
it's appalling.
It is. But like even when you're going into a GP and they're sympathetic, there's a difference between being sympathetic and truly holding the space for your patient and being able to educate them. Because I think when I can speak personally about having had periods of anxiety, and one of the other effects of when you're going through that is that it's really difficult to concentrate and to take in stuff. And I noticed this when I was watching television. I used to have to pause it, and then now you can like rewind live TV, but back then it was things I taped, and I was rewinding them because I couldn't follow the plot. I'd like follow it and then I'd switch off,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'd have to redo it again. And now I'm so much more accepting of all of these things, and when if I might have a period where like I feel, I'm finding it hard to catch breath, I know, like it does upset me, but I know that this will pass, and I know that what I have to do is to just not keep focusing on it and putting expectation of, oh my gosh, when is this going to be done? Because that's not going to help me. And things that I found helpful, and I introduced you to this, Oprah and Deepak's meditation.
Did you introduce it?
Yeah.
I thought I introduced it to you.
No. I introduced you to it.
It's very good. It's very good.
I find Oprah's voice incredibly soothing.
Yes.
And I love that. And I need
I like starting the day with a bit of Oprah. Yeah, it's good.
I need the guided meditation. Although also, I can introduce you to this one. Vishen Lakhiani's. Okay. He's the founder of Mind Valley. He's got a 6-phase meditation, and it's really good. I've been doing that as well. So meditation is really good. I have done a mindfulness course with a friend of mine, Mia. And have you ever done mindful eating?
I'm a bloke.
What does that mean?
Get it in, job done.
Oh my God. No, mindful. We mindfully ate a strawberry, and it was one of the most glorious experiences of my life. It's beautiful strawberry, and you're supposed to like hold it up, and then you look at everything. And then you breathe it in and you smell, and then you take one bite and you really are conscious when you're eating it. And it makes everything taste better. And I remember thinking at the time, wow, I don't eat like this. I eat watching television. And so I'm not even conscious half the time.
If you start eating like that, I am not going to a restaurant with you. It might be cold.
No, but the point is, it's finding things that kind of work for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dancing around my living room to Bruno Mars, also really good thing, makes me happy. And I think a point that we should also make is that it's not about trying to kick into action when we're having struggles. The point about keeping our mental health in an optimal place is to do things every day or every week that are keeping us in a good place. And so when I think about what makes me feel good, and that's literally the question, what makes you feel good? And it can be anything. If you love music, listen to music, on your commute, listen to a song first thing. If you like journaling, I mean, one thing that you've got me into, which has been so amazing for me, is doing morning pages.
Yeah.
I did not think, I had tried to write, I'd heard about morning pages, I'd heard about the artist's way, from various people, but I didn't really know exactly what it was like. And the discipline of doing morning pages, and I did it like very disciplined for about 12 weeks. And now I'm a little patchy, and I miss some. But, the discipline of doing it and just pouring out and getting out all of this stuff that was swirling around in my head has been amazing. And
so for the benefit of people watching,
yes.
what is journaling?
Oh, okay. So, morning pages specifically is something that Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way, it's something that she recommends. It's a practice that she recommends along with artist dates. And I've talked about it in episode 3, which by the time this comes out, you will have seen. And it's writing 3 pages of longhand every morning. And the idea of doing it first thing in the morning is because it's like a brain dump. and you get out everything that might be sort of swirling around and you're not quite sure, so it doesn't kind of clog up your day. Tim meditates first and then does morning pages, and I've kind of copied him, and so I do it, and I kind of like doing it that way. But I also do it at different points in the day. If I don't have time, at that particular point in the morning, I have done it. And so I think journaling generally is just writing. It's getting out your thoughts, and you don't even have to be a good writer. It's not about that. Lots of people, when I've told them about doing morning pages or writing things down, they've judged themselves. Oh, I don't write very well or whatever. And I'm a recovering perfectionist. And Tim told me, it doesn't even matter. Your handwriting doesn't matter. Your spelling doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether there's no punctuation, whether you flit about with topics or whatever, because it's about just getting something out. And I think that when we can just try new things that, you've heard might work for somebody, and you try it, you see, how do I feel doing it? Sometimes you might need to do something 2-3 times before, or even like try it for a week and just see, at the end of the week, do I feel better from that?
So I was one of the world's biggest cynics. I was like, what am I going to do? Write this stuff. It's all mumbo jumbo. And I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to give it a go.
Curiosity.
My
mantra.
Weirdly, it kept coming back to me.
That's like the universe. I believe that.
Okay, so it just kept coming back, and I was just like, all right, I'll do it. And so I got this journal, and I got this. It was morning pages, and I was all right. I'm going to commit to this. I'm going to do. I think it was 12 weeks of every day, getting up first thing in the morning
and doing it.
And everyone goes, I haven't got time to get up. Get up 10 minutes earlier. Get up 15 minutes earlier if you're working. That's what I did, and actually very quickly, within 2 or 3 days, that 10 or 15 minutes or 20 minutes
became an hour.
Well, not necessarily become an hour, but it doesn't become a thing. Suddenly you're used to waking up at a certain time. So psychologically...
I think it depends what kind of person you are. I'm not really a morning person.
Well, but psychologically it was like, okay, so I could do that. For me, I work in normal office hours. Yeah. So of course I've got to do the space beforehand in order to clear the sort of the brain dump, and so I did that 15 minutes earlier, and I just got up, did it before my partner got up. It was just like, that was my thing, because as soon as I hear noises in the house, I'm distracted, I'm off.
What apart from morning pages, what are other things that you find like help you maintain good optimal,
I think some things you've said it is like the reinforcement of stuff. So what you read is really important. Yeah. What you might watch, if you do watch TV.
I don't watch the news. TV. I have
cutting the news out. I mean, there are a lot of advocates that say don't watch the news at all.
Yes.
I agree with that, although I don't adhere to it. So I will watch the headlines. Did you shake your head at me?
No. I mean,
but I'll watch the headlines. But then I switch off, because I find the news is a massive source of negativity, because it's very doom and gloom.
Well, there's research about it. Yeah. There's actual research about the amount of negative media, and now there are channels. There's like magazines and everything. One's called Happyful. Another one, it's this person created a happy newspaper, which is all full of positive things. So I, like you, curate the information that actually is coming into
I think it's really important. So, for example, if you're going to bed and you watch, let's say if you watch TV late at night, which is again another thing you shouldn't really be doing. But again,
I do it.
It's what you watch. If you're going to watch something about murders, or you're going to watch a horror movie or something, that is the last thing that your brain is processing. Whereas if you're reading something that perhaps is a bit more
calmer, or
calmer, or something that's more, it doesn't have that same sort of vibe about it, then over time that builds up. It's kind of like the expression, a jug fills drop by drop, and it really, I think it's a Buddhist expression, but it's true. And you've got to keep filling that jug up with drops, otherwise you're never going to get a full jug. And so it's a case of different things work for different people.
Yeah, I think
the standards,
it's knowing working out yourself, and that's why it's important, I think, to be curious and to try. Like another thing that sort of that helps me feel, I guess, part of life is when I'm discovering new things.
Yeah.
Whether I'm listening, to a speech, to a TED talk, by somebody, on a topic I find inspiring, or whether I'm going to see an exhibition, or you and I like discovering things together. We went to the Carnaby Street Eat Festival, and we were like little kids. You were looking at everything with fun and with wonder, and I like experiencing. I consciously now bring wonder into my life, and I have done for the last 6-7 years.
Well, I want to just pick you up on something, because since I've known you, you definitely went through a period where things weren't going great for you.
Yeah.
And you really struggled for a bit, and the reason why I'm saying this is because there's quite a lot of people that, if they're watching this, might be in the same situation where they don't, at the moment, meditation, it's out there somewhere. It's like, what is that? Journaling, what that's just all too much. What Lara did is she just started with one thing. She started with one thing. She wasn't doing anything in it. She was resistant to whatever it was at the time. And then I remember, and then you did it, and you tried something. I think it was it Oprah? Were you going back into it?
Oh, I used to think I couldn't meditate.
That's right. We felt like
I was doing it wrong because I thought that I had to clear my mind, and that isn't the point of meditation. The point of meditation is that your mind is going to, flit. You're going to notice my mind was like a buzzing bee. And I kept thinking about things I wasn't even aware. I was thinking of shopping and something that happened 20 years ago.
That's
and
right.
what I was wearing.
Talk about that,
And the whole point about meditation, and I learned this from Dan Harris's book, 10% Happier. I learned that the point about meditation is the bringing your mind back to, and that is the whole point, because what you're doing with meditation is you're training your brain. And I think that everything that we do, the more that we practice and we flex that muscle of whatever we're trying to try, is going to actually get you to the place that you need to be. So just to bring this to a close, because we're reached time. I think the thing that I think we both really just want to convey is that mental health affects us all. It's very individual. Figuring out what works for you is an ongoing journey. What worked for you before might not work for you the next time. And that's okay, because what it means is that you have the opportunity to find other things. And for people who are friends of somebody and I wish that we touched on this a little bit more actually in the episode, because this is really important. So this is what I'd like to leave you with. If you have a friend who you know is struggling, and if you don't even know that they're struggling, but their behavior has changed and they're a little bit more withdrawn, or they keep cancelling on you, they're not cancelling on you, generally to be mean or difficult. They're not trying to be a bad friend. They're probably doing it because they just don't feel like they have anything to offer. And it's at that time that you can really show people the measure of you as a friend by reaching out. Because when somebody is struggling, you don't have the strength to reach out, and you actually just don't feel worthy. And so I'm so grateful for the friends in my life who, before I'd vocalized it and when I had vocalized it, they were amazing, and they accepted me for who I was, and they also believed in all of me and saw the light in me when I didn't see it in myself. And so I think that's really just the message that I want to leave everybody with. That Simon Sinek talks about, be the leader you wish you had. I think we should all be the friend that we wish we had. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tim. It's been so lovely. And see you in the next episode.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.